trying to crash through another wattle. When I made the video on Acacia stricta, I talked about how this guy here could be a little bit similar or appear similar. This is Acacia stricta, and in flower, it's obvious that it's not Acacia suaveolens. It's got a much different inflorescence structure. But when they're sort of small like this, it's possible they could be misidentified for something like Acacia suaveolens, but they've got some differences that we can look at. I'm here in the Lucas Heights Conservation Area again. I would say here Acacia stricta doesn't really belong. I think it's been used with a bit of direct seeding. And it's here on the edge of this former clay extraction quarry, and a massive revegetation effort's been done with a lot of wattles. It's like a wattle orchard through this whole area here. And the Acacia stricta, it looks like it's been used to regenerate the quarry. It's a very disturbed weedy area on the edge of some very good bushlands. And I just think the Acacia stricta is a bit of a ring-in, but it is a common species in New South Wales. It's got a huge range. It's got a range very similar, I think, to Acacia suaveolens. It goes up into Queensland to around the Gold Coast and further west. I think that's Stanthorpe and sort of that Stanthorpe area there in Queensland and Wollongara, is it? It gets to about there. Then it comes down the New South Wales coast and tablelands and into the western slopes a little bit. I think it gets as far west as sort of west of Tamworth there, and maybe on towards, say, Wagga Wagga in some areas, and continues down the coast and the tablelands. It's common in Victoria. It goes through, again, sort of the southern half of Victoria, a lot more than the northern half. And it goes into that southeast area of South Australia, Mount Gambier, and north of. That's sort of its western limit. And in Tasmania, again, it's sort of scattered around the coast of Tasmania and a little bit inland, mainly on the eastern half of Tasmania. So I think suaveolens has a similar distribution, I think. I might have to check that, but I think that was a little bit similar. But yeah, stricta's covers all that range. So it's pretty common. I've got to admit, I haven't really seen it, I don't think, in its natural habitat. Stricta's one that's taken me a while to get familiar with. And this is where I come to sort of get familiar with it. It's one of the best stands I know, but again, I don't think it's sort of natural here, and it doesn't grow in the really good bush further over that way on this Lucas Heights plateau. But it's probably one I haven't taken a lot of time to observe in its natural habitat. I'd have to get some woodlands where it's really, really common. Stricta is a much bigger plant than suaveolens. It's a lot bigger, and a lot of the time they're multi-stemmed. They're up to 6 metres tall, and these ones here are demonstrating that. They're just up there. Again, about 3 weeks ago, they were flowering beautifully, and I've almost missed them, like the elongata. I've almost missed them in flower, which is a shame, but they are here, and we can get the point across, but they're just starting to fade a little bit. The stems have got these really prominent ridges. They're red, and they've got these prominent ridges on them, which is sort of really conspicuous. These striations and these, if I feel these stems, they're sort of nicely ribbed, almost sharp, not quite winged, but they've got these nice solid ridges on them. The phyllodes, I think they're reported as up to 14 centimetres long and 1.5 centimetres wide. That's the main range reported. So up to about 15 mil wide. Yeah, they're probably not getting wider than that on this particular shrub anyway. 14 centimetres long. They've got a green colour overall, but to me they've got a slight dash of blue in them. Maybe not as blue as suaveolens, but they've got a little hint of blue. So I'd put it on the sort of greeny side of the spectrum with a little bit of blue mixed in, especially when you turn them like that. And this is where you might get tripped up with our Suaviolans, just on the blue colour. They've got a gland at the base near the pulvinus. There's one gland down there. There it is. I think it's that, yeah, just that different looking bit of tissue there. You know, we're getting a lot of range of colouring with these glands. Sometimes they're brown, sometimes they're like a greeny yellow colour. And here it just looks like it's maybe a darker green in the lighter coloured sort of phyllodes. I'm just going to get another one for a bit of representation. The phyllodes are doing that thing again where they're orientated with the margin towards the sky, and sort of the other margin pointed to the ground, and the margin that's pointed to the sky tends to have the gland on it, and there it is there. You can see the gland there. Remember, in Suaviolans, there was a gland at the top near the mucro as well. Well, stricta doesn't have that. It doesn't have the second gland up at the mucro. That would be one of the killer differences. You might have to check about 5 or 10 leaves. It doesn't have the gland at the top part of the mucro. It's only got it down at the bottom. So you check that as well. Now, the flower structure is completely different. Remember, in Suaviolans, we just had these clusters of individual heads coming out of the axil. Well, stricta's doing what elongata does. It just puts on these solitary globular heads in the axil, or if they're not solitary, they're in clusters of 2 to 4. So they're either individual or in clusters of 2 to 4. So it's doing a very elongata-like thing, which I just made a video on just about 100 metres that way. So this is what stricta's known to do. The Suaviolans, it's got that sort of a branched cluster, which I think gets up to about 15 heads or something like that. Probably not too many more, but it gets up to like, I think I reported possibly up to 10 or 15 heads on the branch structure. This guy's just putting 2 to 4 in the leaf axils. Just going to try and get a cluster and have a close look like we did with the elongata. Yeah, here's one here. See if I kept that intact. I think I just managed to keep them joined. Yeah, again, you can see they're all connected to a bit at the bottom. So it's sort of like they're not purely separated. They're all connected at the base to one little branching structure. And reportedly, there can be up to 4 of them. And they're joined there at the base in just a little, so they're all part of the one branching structure. So yeah, either singly or up to 2 to 4. And that one's sort of demonstrating this as well. The flower colour, again, it's sort of a mid-yellow. I'd call it a mid-fluorescent yellow. And sometimes it's got sort of slightly darker tones. It can be going towards that golden yellow, that deep golden yellow colour. But these ones here, they're sort of in that fluorescent yellow part of the spectrum, I would say. Sorry, the other thing about the phyllodes, which I didn't touch on, and I should have done that, the venation is very different to that of Suaviolans. We've got what we call penny veins. It's doing a lot of parallel sideways venation and a little bit of anastomosing here and there between the veins. And remember, Suaviolans, we couldn't see any obvious secondary venation. The mid vein's prominent, but in Suaviolans, this amount of secondary venation is very obscure. It can hardly be observed. But here we can observe a fair bit of secondary veining, sometimes called penny veins, where you've got a lot of parallel veins going off at an angle to the mid vein. So there's a lot more obvious secondary venation there compared to Suaviolans. That's one of the differences as well. So that's a beautiful Acacia stricta. That's the general colour of the stems. And you can see how thick they're getting in some cases. Down the bottom, the stem is about 3 centimetres thick or so. It's a much bigger beastie than Swabiolens. Just check out this one here, which is a stricta. This one has a stem almost 5 centimetres across, or about 5 centimetres across. So once you see this, you can't think it's Swabiolens. Just not possible. It's not going to get as big. I could probably find Swabiolens growing, you know, maybe about within 1 kilometre of this one, if I get back onto the sandstone outcrop. So there is the potential just for misidentification. Where I've had a discussion about Swabiolens or stricta is in areas like the Royal National Park Heath above Marley Beach. I wanted to call it Swabiolens, and someone else wanted to call it stricta. And yeah, I was confused for a while, but I just came home. I looked up the flower structure. I looked up the size of the plants. I looked up the leaf characters. And I just stuck to my guns on that case and said it's definitely Swabiolens and not stricta. So in a heathland, maybe near the coast, you might have a bit of a puzzle over which one's which. If you wait for them to flower, it will be obvious, really obvious. And it's just the size of the plant generally. The stems have got these really nice lenticels on them, looking a little bit like a privet, really, which is probably a offensive link to make, as this is a beautiful wattle. So that's Acacia stricta. Yeah, I'll have to look out for it in its natural habitat. I just I've rarely come across it when I've been doing rapid plots or anything like that. But I'll try and keep a lookout for it across its range in New South Wales. As here it just doesn't belong. But it's doing a good job of revegetating the area.